but they came out and they hit an immaculate routine and they ended up scoring a 98.93333. Repeating. The lady has a palm in her purse. Like, she's there to just like cheer on and just literally be a fan of this amazing sport. And like, how cool is that? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are going to be talking about my experience this last weekend competing. I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap and also tell you one of the craziest, coolest stories I've ever gotten from a cheerleading competition, and I promise you, you are not going to guess what happened. Now, before we get into the episode, if you are a gym owner, head on over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and join that Facebook group. And if you are a coach or a coach and owner, head on over to All Star Cheer Coaches and Owners and join that Facebook group. If you're an owner who's looking to grow their gym in 2025, there's no better choice than joining the Next Generation Gym Owners Academy right now. The growth that our Academy members are seeing is absolutely mind-blowing. So you need to get into the Academy. If you are not, I personally believe it would be valuable for every single gym owner in the country to be in, because it makes you better as an owner and it's going to grow your gym. But if you want to learn more about that, I would highly suggest you go over to nextgenowners.com and you check out all of our offerings and you book a call with someone on our sales team. Now, let's get into the episode talking about my experience this last weekend at a cheerleading competition in Portland, Oregon. I try to vary things back and forth. I think I'm going to be talking a lot from a coach's perspective. The past 3 episodes, I think, have all been very coach related. I promise the next one is going to be very business related or owner related content. But this just happened this last weekend and it's on my mind and I have not scripted anything. So I'm just going to be speaking from the heart and speaking from what my experience was. And that's what we're going to do. So I appreciate you joining me on this journey. So this last weekend, my gym competed at the Aloha Championships in Portland, Oregon. It is a varsity event. It's always wild. People are always like going back and forth between, I have moments where I'm like, dear God, I never want to compete this close to the holiday break ever again. Actually, back in the day, we used to try to come back mid-holiday break. So we would do break for Christmas. So we would take like let's say the 20th through the 26th off, and then we'd come back and each team would have at least one practice. And then we'd take another small break for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and then we would come right back to practices. And we did that with the effort of like, okay, this is going to get us ready for the first competition a little bit better. We're going to shake off the rust earlier. It's going to be way better. And what ended up happening, generally speaking, was 90% of the kids missed the practices and it didn't help us at all. And so we finally were like, you know what? Cheer takes up enough of people's time. Let's just give them their break. We debated back and forth for years about that. But honestly, I truly think it was one of the best decisions that we made because it made it so our athletes could really just enjoy the break. And honestly, I had some teams that came back that were better after the break than they were before because they were just rested and their minds were a little bit more fresh and they, some of the aching issues had healed in regards to their bodies, especially my older athletes who are putting a little bit more abuse on their bodies. And so it was just overall, I think the break is great. Now, I always, though, come back. And so we came back after New Year's, which means our first practice was Sunday, I believe the 3rd or 4th, and we were competing that coming weekend. So like we had 3 practices to get it together. And if you're in the Midwest, you probably were hit by the snowstorm. So we had just come back from Vegas too. Danielle, I know, flew into a massive snowstorm. And she had teams that were competing this last weekend that literally had like 1 hour of practice time with a full team. And so we've all just kind of been going through it. And I know everyone who competes that weekend has those moments where they're like, what am I thinking? Like, why are we competing this close to the break? And here's why I like to do it. I like to do it because it forces the athletes to come back and immediately get back into the game day mindset. Like, I've got work to do. We actually have something right around the corner. We have that sense of urgency. We need to work. And I think that is so pivotal as a coach to get the athletes back out of that break mindset. My Worlds team did not compete this last weekend. And even though we have a looming Worlds competition, it's our first opportunity at a Worlds bid this season. And we actually then take a long break, almost all of February. We take a break for all of February. Our next bid opportunity is in March. And then we have 3 bid opportunities in March, which is actually pretty insane and stressful. But just because of the way the competition schedule worked out this year, with dates being moved and things being shifted and conflicts in February, that was how things worked. And even with that stress of like, man, if we don't get a bid now, we don't get a bid until March, they still came back kind of lackadaisical, a little bit unfocused. It was like, well, I'm going to miss the first Sunday. And we would have had less of that issue if the athletes were feeling that sense of urgency because we were competing the next weekend. And so I'm really grateful for that sense of urgency and the need to compete early. Taking you into this weekend, we had our fair share of challenges this last week. We've had injuries and sickness, and it was a challenging week for almost every team in the gym. There was every single coach at one point in time this last week went, I don't know if we're going to be ready. And what was so cool about this weekend, and I'm so thankful for, is our teams and our athletes and our parents and the gym just as a whole showed up and showed out. And we had a really amazing weekend. We had multiple teams hitting both days. We had our 4.2 team that did not do well at the first competition, came out and hit 2 zero deduction routines, which is like amazing for them. They scored really, really high and deservedly so. We had just an amazing weekend. It was super awesome to see. And it kind of confirmed that, like, okay, this was absolutely worth doing, because the vibe right now, I know we're only 24 hours out, I'm still nursing that cheer hangover. The vibe right now is fantastic. Now we know some teams are getting summit bids tonight. And so parents are all just over the moon, and they're like getting their balloons together and doing all that stuff. And I want to pontificate on that for a second, which is, one, I think it's super cool that like they get all the time to like get balloons and get posters and get all these things to celebrate these teams winning. But I've got to say, it takes all of the coolness out of it. Like, everyone now knows that you don't get told to come to the gym for the summit bid reveal unless you're getting a summit bid. Now, I know why we went away from it, which was to take away the stress and anxiety around like not getting announced for a summit bid. And there were teams that would win, but then were not enjoying the win because they didn't get the summit bid. That took away from the moment. What I can say is that with this shift, and as it has progressed, it has taken away any coolness of getting summit bids. I think the only way around this would be to not tell your teams and have every team come to the summit bid reveal every single time post competition until the summit bid, every team has received a summit bid, or till they've received a summit bid. I obviously don't want to do that. I don't think that would be the right decision. So we continue to say, hey, we'll let you know if you should come to the gym, which is verification that based off of our calculations, your team is getting a bid. And I don't love that, but I do think it is, I do understand why they made the decision. I don't know that I have the exact answer, other than it makes getting awarded your summit bid kind of like not super exciting. And I would love to have that exciting feeling back to it, rather it be, my level 4 team who received a partial paid bid at their first event, came in, we sat down in front of the TV, they all wore their jackets and they did all that, and we watched. And like when they got announced for the partial paid bid, which they grand championed the event, it was like, woo, like that was about how loud it was. It just wasn't like they were excited, but there was no like that captivating energy, that energy that you feel, especially now still at competitions when they announce the world's bids. Like there's no feeling of like, oh my God, yes. And that feeling is different even at competition as a coach, when I know that my team is getting at-large world's bid or a paid world's bid even. And I've been in that position where I'm like, okay, I know we placed in the top 2. I know we're good. We've got this paid bid on lock, it still doesn't feel the same. So as that coming to the gym does not feel remotely the same as even being at competition and knowing, because you're still in that moment. You haven't been taken away and gone back to life and then now plugged back in. So I think that is something that I'd love to figure out in my gym for how to make that be a cooler experience for my athletes. I had a great weekend. I'll just tell you guys my story for a second. So my level 4 team had a stunt drop on day 1. And so we were in second place with a good score still had a 97.2, but full honesty, this competition scores were pretty high across the board, across all divisions. And I think that's because there was a good cheerleading. And then sometimes you get some judges who are just a little bit more generous on that top end of the score sheet in a couple categories. It was consistent, so I'm not necessarily going to complain. I don't personally love when an event is consistently high, because I think it does make it hard for really great teams to kind of separate themselves out, but they still can. They still absolutely can. It just is a little bit harder. Although I don't think from what I saw that there were placements that were wrong. So at the end of the day, if I'm going to complain about it, like it really doesn't matter. I think they got the placements right. I think they got the scores essentially right, even if I would have maybe scored someone lower. And I think that comes down to just his personal preference, right? Like I maybe would have scored that team a little bit lower, or even my own team. I maybe would have scored them a little bit lower in that category. But then there are other times where I'm like, well, I would have scored them a little bit higher. That's all a little bit personal preference. And ultimately that is what a judge sport is everyone has their own kind of internal, I think that was good versus I don't think that was good. And you're always trying to balance and guess what that is. My level 4 had a good day 1 performance, but not their best. And they were not in first place. They were in second place by 0.01. So 1/10 of 1/10. It was basically a clean slate going into day 2. And they came in, and we had set a goal at the beginning of the competition to try and score a 99 because they were capable of it. And day 2, they hit a beautiful routine, which I've told them, and I will tell the parents again in our scoring review, is not good for my blood pressure because we can't be a day 2 team only. It stresses me out. But they came out and they hit an immaculate routine, and they ended up scoring a 98.93333 repeating, which is like, it was so cool. And I am so grateful and so thankful for the athletes. And I appreciate the judges giving us that score. It is absolutely amazing. It's the highest that team in history, like of all the years, we've never scored a 98.9. So it's the highest score we've ever gotten. And that's really, really cool. But gosh darn, that 0.07 was, man, that was brutal. Or it was a 98.933333. Yeah. So it was 0.07 tenths away from being the 99. And it's one of those like, oh my gosh, so close, but still just so amazing to be in that position and get to experience that, because I've never seen that score on one of my score sheets before. I've seen other people get it, but I've never seen it on mine. So I'm not mad at seeing it, especially in a very competitive division where there's lots of level 4 medium teams with bids this year. So that was pretty cool. And overall, what I loved seeing, I'm going to echo this again, I mentioned it before, was there was good sportsmanship across the board. I loved getting to see all of the different gym owners that have like been to conferences and like come up and chat with me and say hello, and like building those bonds is just so cool. I also love getting to see all the athletes I get to work with through camps. Like that's so awesome to be able to see these kids that I work with in the summer, and I'm still rooting for them, even though they're at another gym. And even if they're competing against us, the team that we competed against this weekend, unfortunately, I'm like really close friends with everyone I compete against in a lot of these divisions, which I think is good, but it's unfortunate just because like we have to try and like beat up each other. Dear friend from Hero Athletics, their program is absolutely phenomenal, and I love and respect them so much. And their kids come to camp, and the owner's daughters also come to individual camp, so I know them really well. And they were all on, like literally all the kids that have been coming to camp for years are on their level 4 team that was competing against my level 4 team. And it's just great to be able to like compete against each other and like, yeah, we want to beat each other, but also like just be happy for one another, and there be like good sportsmanship across the board. It's just a really cool feeling, and there's no animosity with the kids. It's just awesome. It's exactly what the sport should be. We're like, hey, you go and you put everything out there, but then after everything is said and done, like you're all friends, you can joke around, you can be kind to each other. And like both teams had great showings, and that's all you can really ask for in this sport. I tell you all that to bring you to the story that I said you weren't going to believe. So, and maybe I've overhyped it, but I just thought it was so cool. So myself and Josh and Jelani, we just gotten our scores and we were talking about the 0.07 and looking at like, oh, if we'd just gotten 1/10 there, just gotten that thing there, that would have gotten us over. And we're standing there talking, and Josh and Jelani are wearing jerseys. I'm dressed up. I dress up on day 2 like most of my staff does. So I had a black outfit with pink shoes and a pink tie because Vanity's team color is pink. And Josh and Jelani are wearing jerseys, and it's a split jersey. So it's blue on one side, pink on the other, because they both coach Dream with me, and Dream's team color is blue and Vanity's team color is pink. And it's a cool jersey. And these people were walking by, and this gal was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And she's like, where did you get those jerseys? And Josh is like, oh, one of my parents found it on Amazon and bought it for me, because they actually both say Coach Josh. She got him too, even though Jelani's name isn't Josh. I think so. Josh loans it to Jelani because he's new to coaching those teams. And the lady was kind of asking this question. She was like, oh my gosh, are you Vanity coaches? And they were like, yeah, we coach Vanity. She's like, oh, that's so amazing. They did so fantastic. Just what a routine. And she's talking to us. And we're like, she was kind of asking some questions about like, you know, well, do we own a gym? Like, are we actually a gym? Like, what are we? And we were like, well, yeah, we're a gym. Do you have an athlete here? And she goes, oh no. And we're like, why are you here? And she was like, well, I was here in December for the Scandinavian Christmas Festival. And the Scandinavian Christmas Festival wristband was blue. And American Championships was the event we were at, and it was on the same weekend. And she was like, and their wristband was blue. And I just accidentally, like I wasn't really trying to, but I just kind of wandered in, and I guess they let me in because my wristband was the same color. So I wandered into the cheerleading competition to kind of check it out. And I started watching, and I was just so blown away with the athleticism and how great the kids were. I just stayed to watch the whole day. And she was like, I just had so much fun. Now I told all my friends about it. And actually she goes, today is my birthday. And for my birthday, me and my friends, and she gestured over to her group of friends. She's like, that's my boyfriend, Josh. And then my other 2 friends, she goes, so his name is Josh. That's what attracted us to your jersey. I made them all come and watch. And we just love it. It's just so blown away. The lady has a palm in her purse. Like she's there to just like cheer on and just literally be a fan of this amazing sport. And like, how cool is that? I've never heard of it. And then she's talking to us about, when is our next event locally and what's the next biggest event, and, what will be different about that one versus this one. And she's just trying to get the whole download. And she was already like, okay, I'm going to be here for Pac West. I'll see you guys. I cannot wait to watch you. And here is this random stranger who came to a convention center for a Christmas festival, who walked in accidentally to an all-star cheerleading competition, happened to sit down and give it a shot, and watched this sport, watched these athletes do what they do, and fell in love with it so much so that she's willing to pay the varsity door fees to bring her and all of her friends on her birthday to come and watch cheerleading. Like, how awesome is that? I never would have put that on a bingo card ever, that I was going to run into some random person through that course of events that came into a cheerleading competition and just fell in love with watching what these kids do. It's so cool. Like, and I think that speaks to some of the missed opportunity within the sport of how it really could generate a true fan base. Like, it really could have outside fans that aren't only in all-star cheer. If we could figure out a few of the nuances, if we could figure out how to get it out more to the masses, if we could figure out how to reduce some of the things that make the general public go, I don't know if that sports makes me as comfortable as I want it to. If we could figure out some of those things, if we could unsilo all of the information with certain entities that don't want to commercialize it to that point because they don't want the outside eyes on it, and get it to a point where it's like getting out to the masses, like, gosh, that would be so cool. It'd be so cool. It'd be like the next step for competitive cheerleading to be able to start to do more. Because the only real reason that we can't have professional level competitive cheerleading is because there's no money in it, because there's no way to generate revenue, which is what a professional sports team is designed to do. And I don't know. I'm just thinking, I'm just spitballing here. I think it would be cool to see that be another step for this sport to have longevity and carry it through out. So it at some point leaves where it is currently and it continues to evolve and progress. Anyways, so that was my competition weekend. It was an amazing one. I want to thank anyone who was there, anyone who chats with me after listening to the podcasts, anyone who brought their athletes or judges who listen to this or staff who listen to this. Like, I appreciate all of you. It was a great weekend. I had a lot of fun, despite the fact that my team had a rough day one. Like, even though they had a great day two, I think I still would have said the event was really well run and was a fun experience because of all of those other things. So I just really appreciate everyone. I appreciate all of you in the sport. For those of you that braved the weekend after break competition, good for you. Way to be strong. Way to just push and go out there, even though it's terrifying and hard and your kids probably weren't ready. You're fighting the good fight. That's really all I got for you leaving this competition weekend. I want to thank you for listening. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.